Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Fertility Confidence Podcast. This is a super special episode because not only is it the 100th episode of the Fertility Confidence Podcast, which in and of itself is mind-blowing to say. Like when I started this, it really very much was like a fun thing for me to do. I had very little expectations. And so watching it grow, especially over this last year in 2023, has been really, really fun. But the other fun part of this is that I get to sit and hang out with my coaching team for Fertility Confidence Method. And we're going to share with you 4 or 5 or who knows, because when the 4 of us get chatting, there might be tons of nuggets that come out of this, of things that we just really want our clients to leave behind in 2023. So ladies, thank you for joining me to celebrate. Not only this is actually coming out at the very end of the year, so it'll be the last episode of 2023, but also the 100th episode of 2023. So thank you for taking time to come and hang with me today. Yay, everybody's smiling. It's so awkward when you record and film with multiple people because you don't want to overspeak over everybody, right? But it'll happen. It's fine. We'll make this work. Okay, so what my kind of concept and idea for this was at the end of the year, not only do I sit down, but I also, gather feedback from clients, gather feedback from you guys and other team members of like what worked really, really well for us this year and where can we improve. And so that's something that Erica, who's our head of the coaching department, has really done a great job of kind of like connecting with our clients and figuring out. And we've made already some really big adjustments into how we offer care in FCM. And I think that's going to be a very beautiful exploration process for us through the front half of 2024. But I too sit down and think content-wise, where's there gaps and how can we help really amplify our success. And success for me, when I say that, it's pregnancies and births. How can we help our clients have more pregnancies and more births in 2024? And it always, for me, kind of comes back around to this idea of what can we add in terms of support and what do we need to teach our clients? And that's where this kind of idea of what do we really want the people that we work with to just leave behind this year and step into 2024 with different energy. And so the girls and I, before we got on, we kind of shared sort of where our thought process was going. And we have some really good nuggets, I think, for everybody to mull over. So Erica, why don't we start with what you would love to see our clients release in 2023?
Yeah. When I was thinking about this, I think one of the things that has come up in conversations a lot with clients recently is trusting their body. And so what I'd love to see for them to leave behind in 2023 is this fear that they can't trust their body. And what I'm noticing in the community, especially since Kelsey, this year, you bringing in a lot of cycle syncing support through Accelerator, is it's opened up the door for our clients to learn how to trust their body in different ways, especially throughout their cycle, especially learning to understand that, oh, I'm not supposed to be the same every single day. And that it's okay that like one day I'm gonna feel really energized and like excited to go to a HIIT class, and the next week I'm gonna be feeling really like mellow and my body needs yoga, and I think especially like exploring those things through movement and nutrition and their cycle, and seeing how the more that they sync with their cycle actually makes them feel better is like a gateway to creating more trust with their body. Yeah, so that's what I'm really hoping that they can continue to leave that behind, especially as they go through each new cycle, as long as they continue to have a cycle with us, of course. is, just continuing to build that trust and find new ways in each phase even to trust their body.
How, Nani, do you see that a lot in kind of the mindset portion of working with our clients as well, that like fear of trust?
Yes. I think that comes up a lot where they second guess themselves, or they just get so stuck in their mind of like overthinking things over and over, and they get stuck in this pattern. Whereas if they were to just start to feel into their body, start to feel into their emotions, and really check in with themselves from that intuitive sense, because your body is really a huge tool into guiding you. It takes you out of that fight or flight sense of like, oh my God, I gotta be and control, like, oh my God, I gotta be doing all of these things, so sinking in more into the body and allowing the body to guide you as well, because the body is also a part of your subconscious mind. It's that autopilot I guess pattern that's happening. So when you start to sink into that and allow it, obviously pairing it with conscious practices, it's going to guide you even more, and just really tuning into your body especially with cycle syncing.
And I think like kind of what Erica is sharing too is, by teaching the cycle syncing process, we're also showing clients small win areas, right? Areas in which we can start to celebrate things that are changing, instead of really hyper focusing on that one goal. That one goal is there. We're all working together to get you there. And in the meantime, to help eliminate and calm that fear and build that trust, being able to view that in other angles and aspects of your health as a whole is so, so important. And so I think teaching how do we build trust, one of those ways, looking for small wins and building trust with your body in other areas. And then how, Nani, not to put you on the spot, but what could be like a really simple mindset technique when you're saying like drop into your body? What do you really mean by that? How could someone do that if they're hearing that and going, I have absolutely no idea what she's even talking about?
Yeah. And I'm just going to say it very simple. And for somebody has no idea or hasn't done this practice, might be like, that just sounds way too simple. But really, it's in stillness. Get still, like get in a quiet space, and we did that meditation practice or challenge for a week. And that really helps you to just really hear your true, authentic thoughts and really feel into your true senses in your body. And it's just, I think, getting into the practice of allowing your mind to be quiet and your body to be still.
Yeah. I keep getting these like intuitive nudges, and then also very loud outward environmental cues about like, Kelsey, you need to meditate more, which is where that challenge came from. It was totally selfish. We ran a 7-day meditation challenge in FCM because I was like, I need to get my shit together. Everything is telling me, the universe is quite literally screaming at me to sit down and be quiet. And I got so many amazing, when I meditate or sit in stillness, for me, it's the budding of my creative process. And whenever I feel really stuck that way, it's because I don't have enough white space typically. So I get like these bursts of ideas, which most people would be like, that's not meditating, you're not quiet. And so that's what I tried to share with our members, right? Is it's not always about silence. And again, like connecting back with your body. And we teach this concept of asking yourself, what do I need in this moment? Instead of having like a very rigid routine that feels maybe a bit suffocating for some people. It's what do I need in this moment? And letting your body answer, and then acting on that to build the trust back. If you were, if you asked someone over and over and over again to do something for you and they never did it, would you trust them to do it the 10th time? No, right? But if you're doing that to yourself, subconsciously, we're breaking that trust pattern with our body, on top of the fact that you can easily sit there and say, I'm not getting pregnant, therefore my body sucks, right? Like we always have that swirl of vibes. So building trust back with yourself also means being consistent with doing the things that you say you're going to do with yourself, right?
Yep, absolutely. That
Amazing.
continues to build the confidence that we try to really bring out in the program. I would say it's like, look at the areas in your life where you are confident, because you are, in certain areas, and start to move that energy into this space as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, Taryn, our resident nutritionist, what is your one thing you want clients to leave behind in 2023?
This is another thing that is a little bit selfish as well, as in I also need to leave this behind, is just the idea of perfection, and that you are not allowed to like make any mistakes. I think with nutrition especially, like it can be really confusing as to like what to eat to support your fertility, what like balances your hormones, like what's good for men's fertility, women's fertility. Like there's so much like quote information out there, and it can get so confusing. And so you try to like stick to one thing, and when that doesn't work, you automatically feel like you've failed. And I feel like there's so much of that feeling sometimes anyways, again, with like trusting your body that it's not going to like fail you. Is I feel like we need to like shift away from that language just in general. But yeah, just the idea of like you can have birthday cake and still get pregnant this cycle. Like it is possible. And I know like we had someone share yesterday that she had something for her birthday that was like not something that I would enjoy for my birthday. It was like a rice cake with almond butter and some candles. And I was like, I love the commitment, but like you can still enjoy food. And
I feel like we need to send her a birthday.
yeah. And just like knowing that you can eat chocolate and you're not gonna like automatically like it's not a write-off for this cycle. And I think that's something that people just need to know and give themselves grace for, because it's hard enough as it is without putting that pressure on yourself to like stick to a diet or like stay on track or whatever you think you need to be doing.
Yeah. And I think that's such a good lesson for this time of year too, right? Like everyone always kind of starts to panic around mid-December when they're like, I've got 8, travel plans booked and all these Christmas parties, and I'm seeing my family 5 times, and how am I going to do this? And my philosophy might be different than other practitioners. And obviously, if you're like in the middle of an IVF situation, that's a very different reality. But for me, it's like, let's just go and enjoy yourself. Like let's actually take some of the pressure off. And I think perfectionism robs us of so much joy in so many areas. And myself included, like I definitely fall into those ruts. And for me, perfectionism literally kept me from exercising for years, or at least that was my excuse, because when I was, in my early 20s and probably didn't have a very good relationship with exercise, and I worked at a gym and I worked out twice a day sometimes, and for 1 to 2 to 3 hours. And then when I went to med school and I was commuting and that wasn't on the table for me anymore, my perfectionism was like, well, if I can't do that, then I can't do anything, because I can't do it perfectly. Why am I going to bother? And instead of finding other ways to move my body that are significantly more supportive than what I was doing when I was younger, I just let my perfectionism like completely block me from figuring that out. And I see that with our clients all the time, not just blocking from like the joy of celebration or whatever, but actually blocking people from taking another step in their journey because they have this like stranglehold of perfectionism that's required for them to move on. And the reality is that there's so many parts of the infertility experience that we just quite literally can't control. And that is like a direct negative with perfectionism, right? Erica, do you see this as well with your clients, this like desire to be perfect?
Yeah, I see this all the time, especially when they come in and they go through Kickstart, which is, a more specific protocol for a few weeks. But they get really hyper focused on like, I can't have any like slip ups. And that's where we get into this conversation around like, how are you talking to yourself about food? Like, what kind of language are you using here? Because we've had this conversation in the community, how a lot of the women in the community and just the age group that we're in have all come in through diet culture in our upbringing in our teens and 20s. And there's a lot of language around like, saying that we're cheating one day, and it doesn't have to be like that. It can just be that you're having the slice of cake for your birthday because that brings you joy, and the joy that you get from that is so much more important than like the little extra sugar that you're getting that day from a piece of cake.
Totally.
I always talk too about like nourishment and like nutrition. Yes, like the foods that we're eating, like the nutrients, the like protein, the vitamins, the minerals, like all of that is amazing, and it's going to support your hormones and your fertility. But you also have to think about like what's going to nourish your body and like your mind too. Like it's not just about like the numbers and the ingredients of things all the time, like nourishing your body with like a brownie because it's like
I love nourishing my body with a brownie.
Yeah, I clearly I'm craving brownies right now. But yeah, like it's nourishing your body, and not only with food but like also with like movement and meditation and like those mindset practices. And like it's really, yeah, nourishment is like a big word in my vocabulary.
And we're really trying to, or at least I'm really trying to steer away from using the word diet in anywhere in the program, with clients, in content, wherever, because I just feel like as soon as we hear that word, which, as practitioners, we kind of use interchangeably with like nutrition plan or how you eat. But as a like run of the mill consumer and as a woman, when we hear diet, we hear less, we hear cut out, we hear strict, we hear perfect. And those just aren't the vibes that I think anyone in the fertility space or not needs to bring or should be bringing to how they nourish their body as a whole. And that again really comes, I think both of these so far have really shown good examples of like whole body medicine, right? It's not just when I talk about it, it's like, it's not just the uterus. We can't just focus on the uterus, but when we also talk about whole body medicine, we also have to look at it from the energetics piece of things. We have to look at it from joy and love and dopamine and, feel good chemicals and hormones that honestly are probably more therapeutic in some ways for some instances in some people than you being strict and perfect with your plan. And so finding that, I don't even want to say balance because I don't think that is an appropriate word either, but finding that interplay between these are the things that are going to be supportive of me, and I'm allowed to hold the duality of like life is meant to be enjoyed and a little bit sweet sometimes. And I'm definitely craving chocolate now. Luteal Face Kelsey is ready for some brownies and chocolate molten lava cake. That's actually that's my thing. Chocolate molten lava cake. Tyler dies. We actually had chocolate molten lava cake the other night because I literally just eat it plain, and he's all about like hot and cold and ice cream and like that's his thing. And I'm like, no, I just really just want the chocolate. I really don't want anything else. Okay. Hanani, what is something that you hope our clients leave behind in 2023?
I would love for them to stop saying yes to things that they really want to say no to. And for so many reasons, I think we're always evolving, and being okay to prioritize your self-care, like taking care of yourself first and not saying yes to like an event that you really don't have the energy towards going to, or even like parts of your job that you're not in alignment with. Like, how can you be creative if you still really love this job? Like, how can you be creative to move things around, shift things around, and um start saying no to the things that you don't really want on your plate anymore, and be creative there. I just think that helps to release a lot of like guilt or shame, like I talk a lot about energy work, and that creates stagnancy in your body and stagnancy in your mind. And I want to help people to have more joy, like we we're talking about, and create more of that. And I think boundaries is a big topic that comes up a lot in FCM, with family events and things like that. And I want to help people to just um take their power back and say and prioritize their self-care, their mental health, and it's also really in alignment and beneficial for the other person on the other end, that if you really don't want to go, that you just be and say no, and authentic with that.
Yeah, we've been having this conversation a lot to the point where I'm like, okay, do we need to add like a boundaries module or like some sort of extra coaching? Because I definitely feel this one. And I think a lot of why this one is so important, this concept of like, stop saying yes to the things you actually want to say no to, also comes with the fact that we work with a lot of like type A, high achieving, perfectionist driven women, right? And though, and like, hi, it's not just you, that's also me. And it's taken me a really long time to lean into this concept of like, I don't have to say yes to everything. And if I look at my calendar, and especially for things like work related stuff, if I have a space in my calendar, it by no means I have to fill it. And if there's things on my plate that I actually really despise doing, I don't have to do them. There's going to be certain things I don't particularly enjoy like having to wipe my daughter's bum when she's 4 years old and she knows how to do it. But sometimes it's a battle you don't want to wage, right? Like there's always going to be exceptions. But let's talk about boundaries for a little bit. And I think we could have the conversation in terms of like boundaries with people, boundaries with food, boundaries with like where you're willing to go. But how can people who struggle with this idea of being selfish, and I mean the word selfish to come off in a positive way, we need to like completely eliminate that negative connotation with that word. But how can people really start to say no and set those boundaries?
Yeah, that's such a good one. I really think it starts with self-reflection and clarity, and figuring out for yourself, like, where did you learn this? Where did it come from? And we do a lot of journaling in FCM and really help people to start that practice so that they can really get to know themselves deeper. And I want to say that would be a great place to start, is to start to just learn that for themselves. And how can you start to let go of that? Like, where did you learn this from? Because it was most likely learned when you were younger, 0 to 12, right? Those models that you saw in your life, or the way culture was moving in that direction. And then it's like, or maybe it was somebody else taught you that, right? Just that way of living. And I think that's a best place to start. And then just slowly building courage and releasing that need to continue to go. Like, there's somebody that I'm working with currently, and she's wanting to release, always being productive. Like, I guess she learned from some way along the lines when she was younger, that she always needed to be going and doing and doing and doing. So she's been hyper exercising and hyper doing a lot of things. So I really encouraged her to start to implement just presence with herself and get clarity on where that actually came from. And is this something that you still want to have, so that you can reframe that? I think that's the best place. How about you?
Yeah, I think we could treat this kind of similar to how we do like the stress inventory in FCM, where, it's a great time of year to do it. And it's actually something that I do at the end of the year from a business perspective, is make a list of the things that aren't working for me anymore. Like, what isn't working for me, either because I just quite literally, that's just something I have no joy or passion doing, or it's, creating a sense of resistance or stuckness, or it hasn't moved in the way that I've wanted to see it move. And I think we can do this for our everyday lives. Like, just sit down and free flow write, what are the things right now that aren't working for you? And what we do with the stress inventory is then we take that list and we break it into 2 columns. One is things I can control, and one is things that I can't. So looking at the things that you could legitimately delegate, say no to, get off your plate in a more simple way. And that's not everything's going to be easy for you to be like, okay, I no longer do these 10 things, but I guarantee you there's quite a few where you could legitimately wake up tomorrow and be like, I don't have to do that. It's going to be uncomfortable at first, right? To like make those changes. And then the second column being the things that maybe you can't actually delegate, get rid of, say no to, but how do we then use our mindset techniques, our tools, our, balanced stress response to perhaps change our perception to those things? And similar to the perfectionism, it's not an all or nothing approach. If you can only remove one bad seed from your plate, or one thing, or set one boundary, that's always going to be better than not doing anything at all. So given the time of year, I think this is a really great exercise to then be able to go into January and say, like, okay, these are some adjustments that I'm going to make for my life. And I think it can look like a wide variety of pieces, not just work related and not just home related, but things that you are, doing just yourself that aren't working, and one small change at a time. We don't have to do the whole list, January 1st. We can take it step by step and habit stack and build and get comfortable. And the more you get comfortable, the easier it's going to be to quickly check in with yourself. Is this a yes or a no? And actually respond appropriately, instead of just always being the yes woman.
Yeah. And I think it always starts with ourselves. So that's why, I didn't necessarily go into like boundaries with other people, because I think it always starts with you and within you. And once you build more of that, I guess, healthy boundaries with yourself, then you can also do it outwards with others. In a loving, kind, courteous
always
way,
from kindness,
right?
Yeah. Always like, let's say no, but be kind, right?
Yeah, we're not just gonna be like cut off. No,
absolutely not. I'm trying to like explain my no's to the children more. And honestly, it's a really great practice tool. So even if you don't have a lot of boundaries, maybe that you feel you need to set with your partner, for example, someone you're like really close with, practicing with them can make it easier to then set the boundary with, let's say, your mother or the coworker that keeps asking you when you're going to have a baby. And the people that, are really just not adding joy to your life. Like those, I'm a non-confrontational person. It's not easy to set boundaries. So the four of us can't sit here and be like, just say no. Like, it's so simple. We all know it's not. And practicing honestly with small things that really don't matter over time, it's going to be significantly easier for you to just like sit with yourself for a second and be like, actually, that's a no. And then now, okay, how do I frame my no in a kind and polite way? Because I'm assuming you're a kind and polite person, and some boundaries maybe need to be a little bit stronger and stricter, and you'll navigate that when the time comes for sure. But without practice, it's always going to feel uncomfortable. And so starting somewhere is important.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. This is something too, I think that I'd love to see our clients actually say no to us more often.
Yeah, I
And
was
what I
thinking
mean by that,
too.
yeah, and I know that there's an element of trust that needs to be there in following through with their plan. But I'm specifically referring to when we start to investigate a little bit deeper, and I think you do a really great job of this, Kelsey, in office hours, where there are so many things that you can add. You don't need to do all of the things. And that's where the perfectionism piece kind of ties back in again as well, is that you don't need to do all of the things. And so sometimes there are opportunities to add another supplement. But we need to have that conversation. Like, do you actually have the capacity, financially, physically? Is adding another supplement going to mean that you actually start to resent your supplement routine, that you're maybe going to skip more days? I'd rather you be consistent with less than be starting to have like those negative feelings towards your routine. And so that's an area where I think like it's a conversation I notice comes up often, is like there are more things we can add in, but do you have the capacity to say yes to more right now?
Yeah. Is that always within your best interest? I 100%
Yeah.
agree with this. And it's definitely something in office hours when someone's there with me, I'll always ask, like, there is more, but what's your pill burden right now? Like, how are you feeling? Because it's one thing for me to be like, sure, add these. It's not me taking them. But again, do you wake up every morning and dread taking your supplements? Are you financially burdened by the supplement plan? Because like you say, I would rather you be consistent with less than inconsistent with more. That's not going to do anybody any good. And then for us, a few months down the line, when we're reevaluating, when we're asking ourselves, okay, where do we go from here? Because this option hasn't been successful thus far. If they're then coming back and being like, well, I haven't really been consistent, we're now kind of stuck at a standstill of like, well, we really shouldn't take a step forward if we haven't actually completed plan A yet. So it almost hinders your advancement in treatment and in protocols if we're adding and adding and adding, and then you're like, ugh, I need a break. And valid. Like, I think all of us are really good as a team as being very encouraging of, I need a break. And when clients aren't saying that outwardly, us recommending, like, why don't you, step back for a week? If you're going away, like, let's not take your supplements. Let's actually like leave your temp drop behind. Let's maybe step out of this world for a hot minute. Like, nothing bad is going to happen, and then come back and reevaluate. So a break isn't necessarily bad, but if you've overburdened yourself with X, Y, Z and adding and adding and adding and adding, and then we're taking it away and you're off for months and months. And this is a very common pattern we see that clients have before they come in and work with us, because they're often just, scrapbooking a plan together off of all the various Facebook recommendations. And then when it doesn't work, they just stop, and then they're kind of spinning their tires. It's never going to get you very far, right? If we're doing that. So I love that addition. I think that's a really important concept. And it's definitely something I've been more mindful with, of like, I know what feels like a lot for me, but what feels like a lot for you, and kind of checking in with people in that way of, it would like I can't take a lot of pills at once.
Mhm.
So when I'm putting a plan together for myself, it is intentionally very small. Whereas we have clients that are like, load me up, like used to it, doesn't matter. And I'm like gagging, just thinking about giving them more. And then we have like all variations in between, right? So kind of
Mhm.
figuring that's where the personalized piece also comes into play.
Mhm.
And that really like beautifully leads, I feel, into my thing that I want our clients to leave behind this year. And that is this like need to be doing what everyone else is doing. And we see this a lot in just the general infertility community. I follow obviously a lot of infertility focused Instagram accounts, especially like women driven accounts, not just practitioner accounts. And it just mind boggles me when they're like, this is what I'm doing. This is what I did. This is the exact protocol I use. And people are asking, what is the protocol you use? And they're sharing. And in a way, I'm like, okay, having these conversations is so important because it's bringing awareness to infertility, awareness to various forms of treatment, which I think is really important. But on the other side of that coin, it's also creating this environment of, well, that's what she did and it worked, so I'm going to do that too. And we don't necessarily know that your body is the same. And I can almost guarantee you it's not. And so when we're looking at it from a research-driven, personalized way, the chances of her protocol working for you is actually quite slim. And so we see this outside of FCM, but I also see it inside Fertility Confidence Method, where because we're doing office hours so frequently, we're having the conversations, we're sharing in the community. I always get questions of people being like, last week you recommended this to her, and I'm wondering if I can take that. And it always has to come back to, does that actually make sense for you? Like based on where you're at in your journey, what your lab results are saying, what your hormones and symptoms and whole body cues are telling us. Do you have the capacity? What is your burden like right now? Does that actually support our goal? Because adding things to just add things is never going to get us very far. And I think that kind of whole rounds up all of our sort of pieces that we chatted about, right? And so what I really want women to remember is that it's not a cookie cutter approach. And when we're taking all of these ideas from everybody else, and bless them for sharing. I know they're not sharing with ill intent. They're sharing to raise awareness, which in itself is incredibly important, especially with women doing like autoimmune protocols and extensive testing. And we're really dabbing in this world of ruling out uterine infections and how that's contributing and not being talked about. And so the more we share, the more women are going to say, huh. But instead of saying, huh, I'm going to do that, let's bring that back to your care team and ask the question, is this right for me? Then you're not potentially wasting money, potentially not wasting your time, hoping that something's going to work before you get true, proper, individualized support, but also not wasting hope on something that wasn't actually built out specifically for you. So what's right for someone might not be right for you. And you don't necessarily need to do everything that everyone else is doing. And that comes back to, setting boundaries with yourself and the perfectionism piece, and kind of all the things that we've chatted about. Any thoughts, comments, shares?
I feel like it comes back to that like trust thing too, and like trusting your body and like taking a protocol from someone that you see online because it worked for them and having nothing in between, thinking like, is this going to work for me? Like, is this going to help what I'm going through right now? Or just seeing something and taking that at face value and like as a blanket statement, like this supports fertility, whether like, yeah, you could be looking at something as to like, is this going to work for me and like my goals, even outside of fertility potentially.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. I think that also creating that trust, letting go of perfectionism, learning how to set boundaries also creates that sense of autonomy that I think gets lost for a lot of women on this journey because they feel so like out of control. And we work with women who know how to set goals and exactly how to achieve them. And this is one of those things that they feel like they have no control over how to get to the outcome. And so the more they can build that trust with their body and actually feel like they have control over what they can say yes and no to, it brings them back to that like autonomy and like, oh, I'm actually in the driver's seat of this journey.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of that too lately with talking with women who are like, well, the fertility clinic said IVF is my next option. And there's really no discussion as to like, would you like to go through that option, or like, or having them again have that like autonomy and tapping into their intuition to say like, well, are there other options? Like, what else can we do before that?
Mm-hmm. And sometimes we're jumping to that option way too quickly, right? Like, so, and I always tell our clients, like, this is something I'll be very honest about, that if I really feel this is the next best step for you, I'm not going to waste your time saying, let's try this and let's try that. But a lot of times when we're seeing that recommendation and we're reviewing the labs and what they've done so far and their antral follicle count and, the things that are really supposed to make those decisions, it's like they're pushing that strictly from length of time of trying. And that doesn't necessarily mean that the door should be closed for other options. If the client is wanting that door open. So that is something that's come up a lot, especially in the last couple of months. Like we were talking in our meeting yesterday that there's been a lot of IVF in Fertility Confidence Method over this like back half of 2023. And I think there's also been a lot of conversation with that being the next step for women when that might not necessarily be true. And so allowing them to ask those questions is, I think, such a gift we give to our community of being able to say, like, I see where they're coming from, but based on what we know, if you're not ready for that, that's okay. And the odd time I have to say, I think that's a good idea. So where are you mentally with making that decision? We don't want to take too much time, but you also want to be mentally, like in the game, so to speak, when you're entering the IVF space. So being able to sort of allow them to question, I think, has opened up different avenues for clients. And we've also had many pregnancies with women who were told IVF is the only thing. And that wasn't actually the case for them in terms of their success. So I think that's a really good point. Okay, usually I end our episodes asking my guests what's one piece of fertility advice that they'd like to leave somebody, but I feel like we all just gave our piece of fertility advice. So I thought it would be fun maybe to actually share with our listeners what is the one thing that we're personally focusing on for 2024. And so I'll start to kind of give you guys a second to maybe think about your answers because I'm springing this on you. But something that I really realized for me this weekend specifically, and I think it was you, Hanani, who mentioned the client that really has this like belief of productivity. And that speaks to me like wholeheartedly of I have a very hard time feeling unproductive when I'm like sitting down and not doing anything. And I've spent this year, I feel really like understanding that about myself. And reframing the fact that resting actually is incredibly productive especially as someone who does struggle with burnout and just the recurrence of that and the fullness of my big, beautiful life, that sometimes it's really easy to slip back into old patterns. And so for 2024, I have lots of goals, but the main one that I think is kind of at the top, that truly is the umbrella to everything else being achieved and manifested, is me just really leaning deeper into this concept of rest is productive and allowing myself to sit actually in stillness more, not with my phone, not, with the TV on, not with things to like actually distract me, but just get comfortable being with myself. And honestly, I'm very much never alone, but really enjoying rest again, instead of waiting till my body says like, you now no longer have a choice. So that's my kind of goal to start off 2024. Erica, what is yours?
So I've been thinking about this recently because I set a word for every year as like the tone or the theme I want to focus on. And the one that I've been coming back to recently is alignment. In just every decision I make and in every area of my life, is this actually aligned with my desires? And so part of that is getting clear on like, what do I really want here? And, setting boundaries, like we were talking about with Haunani, saying no to things that aren't in alignment. And so that's the theme that I think is going to overarch all of my goals in 2024 is, giving myself that pause to ask, does this actually align with the desires that I'm working towards?
Yeah, I love that. That one's good. Taryn?
I think that's a big part of mine too. And just like kind of almost this like rediscovery and like rebirth of myself in my life and just like the stage of life I'm in right now, and just kind of assessing things and analyzing like what's actually like an emergency, like what needs to be done right now and what can maybe wait an hour, tomorrow, next week to be done. And yeah, just ultimately like feeling really supported and like again like nourished by the decisions that I'm making for myself, so that I can like be the best version of myself for myself, but also for like the people around me.
I think that really aligns with second year of motherhood. Coming out of the first year and being like, okay, who the hell am I? And what am I doing and how am I doing it? And how am I doing it appropriately for me and for my family? So that's really beautiful. Haunani, what's your goal for 2024?
I think trust and timing is a big thing that's maybe been like in the back of my mind this whole year, but I think I want to intentionally place that into 2024, is just trusting timing, not trying to force things to happen by a certain time. Like sometimes I'll be like, I want this to happen this time, and I'll tell it to my whole family, and then it doesn't happen, and just be like, okay, it's going to happen. I don't know when, but it will. So trusting the timing, releasing like the force of it having to happen a certain time, because like Erica said, like once I'm in alignment with whatever that is, it will happen. And not trying to put more on my plate to think that that's going to make it happen faster, because I tend to do that. So I tend to like put all these things on my plate and then take it all off and then do this like back and forth thing.
We are all exactly like our clients. We are not better than you. We are not, like in a totally different stage. It's just different aspects of the same shit, honestly. I think all of those are great and are also in their own way, like 4 more really beautiful tips that our clients can definitely sink their teeth into, because I really agree with the alignment piece and the like rediscovery of you outside of infertility. I think is a really beautiful kind of concept to take into 2024. And then with the piece of like, how do I want to word this? Just setting that intention of how you want to move forward, and the intention not being, I want to get pregnant, but, and on this timeline, right? I think we're really like stifling our manifestations when we're putting them in this tight little box. And I do this mindset course every day. And that's been a big teaching she's had over the last few weeks of, really understanding that when you're in alignment with your desires, everything that you need is already here. And there is no timeline. You can't control the timeline. You can't know the how. Your job is to really just make sure that you are in alignment with what you desire. And every time I do personal development for myself, the back of my brain is always going, how can we bring this to the fertility space? How can we pull this in with our clients? And I think that's a really interesting sort of transition into how we approach care in 2024 and how we go deeper with helping women release that timeline desire and expand their desires, perhaps outside of just that one central focus, and celebrate their small wins and watch themselves grow and know that all of the wonderful decisions that I'm making, they're getting me to the end result that I want. It's just perhaps not on the timeline that I had in my head. And the feeling of that being annoying and shitty and frustrating is true, as well as being able to say, I release this, and really finding the capacity to do that. I think this time of year, especially, it's so important to explore those conversations with yourself and also with your partner. Like, what do they want out of 2024? What do they want to leave behind? Where do they want to sort of work on things personally and as a couple? I think that can also open up a lot of really beautiful conversations as well. Thank you, ladies, for joining me. This was so lovely. We'll have to do it again sometime. Maybe it'll be an annual thing. We'll do this at the end of every year. So thank you for being here. Much appreciated. I think everyone's going to get a lot of great tips out of this, and I'll talk to you guys later.